I always say to them, at the start, like, when I first meet them, how do you want me to speak to you? Like, and they'll say, like, oh, I want you to be nice, but I don't want you to be, like, if I'm taking the mick, I want you to tell me, like, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, okay, like, but it's obviously certain things I won't say, you know what I mean? Because that's not appropriate to say, like, but I'll say to them, like, oh, are you coming to the match on Saturday? And they might be like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm going to come, like, and then they'll forget that they said it, you know what I mean? 20 minutes later. So you just have to remind them and you just have to be gentle with them and just say, okay, I'll remind you on, say, Thursday night, back by your parents, say, like, you know what I mean? Make sure that you've got your shin pads, everything. And if they say, oh, yeah, I forgot it, it's like, well, it's okay. I've got a spare set of shin pads, you can have them, and I'll happily not play if it means they can play. Definitely. I mean, you know what I mean? You don't want to overcomplicate things, like, you know what I mean? You can, try and cover too much sometimes in one session, and you think, like, well, don't overdo it, like, you know what I mean? By the time they process that, you know what I mean? It could be, like, if you started your session at 9, it could be 11 before they've, got used to it, and before they've done anything, like, and things. But, you just got to let them, like I say, come out of their own shells, really, and encourage them to reflect on their own game as well. Like, I mean, there was a lad with autism, because I work at Anfield on a match day sometimes, like, and they sometimes, say, oh, like, they won't say it, you know what I mean? Like literally the whole club say it, like, but some people will come up to me and, just say, oh, well, there's a lad with autism here, like, why is he here? I'm like, what do you mean, why is he here? Like, he's here to watch the game, same as you, like, you know what I mean? It's, it's a bit bonkers, like, you know what I mean? You think, well, you know what I mean? If you're going to, like, come to a football match, then at least respect other people, disabled people or not, you know what I mean, are going to come and watch the football match as well.
Hello and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with Coach Luca. As each week passes, we're getting closer to Christmas, and I hope you're getting into that Christmas mood and ready to wind down from coaching to give yourself some much needed relaxation over Christmas. Whilst you decide to relax and maybe not on a football pitch, this is a great opportunity and a great time to really listen to the podcast, reflect upon the year that you've had, learn and resemble your takeaways from what you've had in terms of the experiences, the reflections and opportunities to develop over the course of the year, as well as any challenges and barriers that you have faced. 2023 is a perfect opportunity and example for you to really reflect and develop that reflective practice going into 2024 to develop that journey, that ongoing process and own personal development in the process. The Reflective Coach podcast can really help you and stimulate this learning process with so many reflections, insights, stories, and opportunities to learn from those who appear on the podcast. If you're listening, I'd always love to reach out to you and connect with you to build that coaching community, that coaching network, to develop that reflection and to hear from you within those experiences. This week, though, I welcome Coach Sophie Coyne, who is currently studying a master's degree and who is doing some fantastic work, which is going to be released at the end of the year, which is going to make fantastic reading in terms of the work that she's put in over the time on her masters and the opportunity to really delve into what she wants to apply in terms of disability sport, inclusion, and diversity. She talks about her own experiences as a player and what they come across as when working with coaches, what she'd like to see as a player, and what she takes away from being a player into being a coach herself now, and utilising that reflective practice, those studies, those insights, and that theory, as well as amalgamating it all together with what she'd like to see and developing that vision so she can really progress within the game to apply what she'd really want to help others to do in terms of developing a more inclusive sport and accessible pathways. She gives insights in terms of her own works and what she's been involved in, both in terms of matchday experiences, coaching, her studies, and so much more, which really applies and takes away so many fantastic insights. This episode develops and builds upon Sophie Bardup's episode, who appeared on a podcast talking about disability sport, diversity, and inclusion herself, and what she does as chairwoman sitting on a board and a committee in terms of how she helps her volunteers and looking at the holistic picture. Building upon that episode, Sophie offers so many reflections and insights which can really then bridge together those two episodes and create that learning pathway and that journey which I touched upon at the start of the episode within this recording. You can really take away in terms of linking those episodes together to really build upon those learning experiences as to whether you're an inclusive and disability aware coach, and as to whether you're doing that as a club as well. How can you do that for your team? How can the club come together? What resources do you have available? How can you be more inclusive? Can you create more partnership networks? Can you put on more sessions? Or if you don't have disability pathways as such, or a holistic team, or a team for disability, but you have inclusion across your teams, how can you make little adaptations in terms of encouraging players to be inclusive, to allow them to have those accessibility options, allow them to become part of the team, those little changes in ensuring those players can feel comfortable and encouraged, allowing them to really overstep the barriers which come into play, how coaches can be supported and understand the ways of doing that, how you could utilise assistant coaches and really build upon those players. It is a learning process, and it can be difficult at times to ensure that it is inclusive, making those slight adaptations, making sure that you're not segregating groups, but there is an opportunity to specialise and support those. So it's that finding that right balance which is really important, but making sure that you are inclusive at all times to provide those opportunities and not turning players away just because they have an additional need or disability. So overall in this episode we talked about disability and inclusion, finding sustainability for clubs. Don't overcomplicate, so those little adaptations in terms of language and making sure players feel welcome, to feel encouraged, including participants in feedback stages, cohesive partnership opportunities, strategic partnerships and strategic needs for participants, tools for engagement, considerations and delivery, environments and structure, and participation needs. So overall, there's so much within this episode and so much for you to really take away and learn from. Don't forget to build upon Sophie Bartup's episode in terms of what she offers here with Sophie Coyne. But Sophie had such a wonderful insight in this episode, and she is doing some fantastic work, as I touched upon at the start. Don't forget to drop a like, drop a follow, drop a subscribe, and leave a comment across the socials. It does really help the podcast. You can find the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and Podcast Addict, as well as LinkedIn at Twitter. It is at TRC Podcast _ on Twitter. It is a Reflective Coach podcast everywhere else. And as you can see on screen, I'm Anthony _ Luca 96. Help share these episodes, help share these insights. It does really help engage those in the coaching community to provide those learning pathways which are going to be really important for 2024. Thank you for listening, Coach Luca.
I mean, it's interesting. Like me and my friend were looking up to see how many disability, like football clubs, specifically, around the country, and we were looking and we found there was like, over 2,000. So we thought, well, why isn't this 2,000, football clubs working together, to create one goal, for inclusion? Like, it's, you start to think, well, okay, every county FA's got their own disability league. Most different, not everyone's got one. So why wouldn't all those leagues come together and think, oh yeah, okay, we're creating an opportunity for inclusion, but we do it, as a unit, not just, oh, you go to your Manchester FA, you go to Liverpool, you go to Stockport, you go wherever, like, And I think everyone just needs to come together a bit more and, not work against each other necessarily.
Time session on Saturday, so it's very much appreciated. So cheers for that.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. Like, I don't really do much of the weekend sometimes anyway. Like, there's no games for a while, so.
And you make the most of it before we get back into that hectic schedule for sure.
Oh, literally. Well, it's not till August, luckily. Like, so I've got a bit more time, like August 23rd. So.
Yeah. So I'm at a point where school finished yesterday for me, so teaching's wrapped up. But I'm feeling it today because we had to move 2 different classrooms from 2 different buildings into a 3rd building. So I've done that on my own because of the behaviour that I'm in charge of. So that was very tiring, very busy. Lots of removal happened, but it's nice to have the 6 weeks. And a few weeks ago, I was under 19s coach in a club I was at, had a sort of restructure, and the 16s coming up there. Coach wanted to be lead coach, as he had his squad under 6s. So I said, fair enough. It's your squad. I'm not going to stand in the way of that. So I made the decision to stand away from the club and sort of give myself some breathing space and appraise what's happening. And I had a phone call the other day from someone that I knew who I coached with at an academy, offering me an assistant manager in the first team for the rival club. So I've just got to contemplate between now and tomorrow before meeting up whether I want to take that on for the year or whether I was going to have a year out, which I had planned for. So it's all swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, it definitely sounds it. Sounds very busy.
Absolutely. And the whole point was to have a year out to stop being as busy.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I am always getting told that you need to rest. As I said, like, rest, what's that like? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Rest doesn't really exist sometimes when you're coaching.
They never exist. Not at all. Definitely not. I'm coming up 8 years in grassroots coaching, or coaching in total, including academy. And well, I think that would be the first point that I'd have like some actual way not coaching. So that after 8 years, even Pep Guardiola had a sabbatical. So.
No, definitely. I mean, Klopp's the same. Like, I'm sure he'll reach a point, eventually. I mean, he's quite motivated at the moment, like, but, when he gets there, like, he probably will have to stop, like.
Absolutely. So it's great to have you on, Sophie. As you know, the topic, as we discussed, is focusing about disability and inclusive opportunities, which is great because that's your background, is what you do, with a big focus. And there's a lot which we're going to delve into and find out more about Sophie and what she does. But I'm not sure whether you wanted to introduce yourself, who you are and what you're doing, and your background, really.
Yeah, so my name's Sophie, as you've said, like, I've got a lot of different roles, really. I'm holiday camp activator at Greenbank, in the sports academy based in Sefton Park in Liverpool. Help run holiday camps. We're hoping to get football camps going soon as well, so currently working with the management on that one. I'm also at John Moores doing a level 6 sports coaching degree, going into my final year, so it's going to be a big year next year, really, like 10,000 word dissertation, and coach at Liverpool Feds, and help coach within disability sport in general as well.
So it's a lot that you're balancing, a lot that you're doing between academic and coaching. So, a lot of late evenings, weekends, some early mornings, traveling, commitment, taking on players, planning, delivering sessions, reflections, studying, reading. There's a lot which goes on between coaching and studying in that combination.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, me and my mum always have a bit of a joke, really. Like, she says, like, she can't really keep up, because I'll tell her that I'm going to different places just so she knows where I am. Like, and she goes, well, when's that? And then she'll get mixed up with where I actually am, because she just says, you're doing so many activities, and, she says she can't keep track, really. So, yeah, it's just, nice to be coaching out, really. Like, considering that, probably maybe 23 years ago, I might not even have been here, really, due to being epileptic. So, it's nice to be able to make a difference, really. Like.
Absolutely, and I love the fact that you are making a difference and that you're able to fulfill what you want to do, especially considering, as you said there, what could have stopped that from happening. So it's good that you're in that position, it's that you're enjoying it as well. And obviously a long way to go in coaching. Is a big commitment to sort of go into coaching. But what made you want to coach then? Why coaching?
Well, the fact I'm epileptic obviously had a big impact as well. Like, I haven't had a fit for 9 years, so fingers crossed never have one again. Like, you know what I mean? So, but it's one of those, I think, people, always say, oh, I had a really bad game this weekend. You say to them, well, why did you have that game? And part of the reason sometimes is the coach, like, you know what I mean? There's coaches within our league and within the girls' league, and you think, like, how on earth did they, get past the DBS check, or how did they, do all them sorts of things, like, and you think, you want to change, what they're thinking, and think, well, hang on a minute, just stop, think, what's the participant thinking? I used to coach in school as well, so for the girls' football team, along with the teacher, like, so that was quite good. But sometimes you just think and you look at things and you think, no, I need to change that. Like, that's not how coaching should be. Like,
I love that, and I love that quote that you said there. In terms of what's the participant thinking, because it gives that perspective, and we have to think of that sometimes. So if you've delivered something, or you said something in a certain way, or you're delivering a session, especially when you're giving context or trying to structure a session for those with disability or ALN, what really are they thinking and are they taking away? So what we might perceive in our minds, they're perceiving it in a different way. So sometimes, kids are quite literal, especially with, say, a disability or autism, because even sometimes someone says, right, I'd like you to turn right after this way. I'd like you to turn right here. Realistically, you might think, right, next right turn in a couple hundred yards, you're going to turn right. But for like someone with autism, they might literally turn right
where they're stood or where they're at that point. So taking that literally can sometimes come into play, and that's a big consideration as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we used to have a player with autism in my disability football club, and he literally did take everything literally. We didn't realise at first he was autistic, like, but he was one of those, like, you know what I mean? We said to him, well, okay, we want you to stay up front, but sort of stay in the centre. And then because we told him to stay up front, he thought, well, I'll literally stay up front, like, you know what I mean? But he really, could have taken someone out, like, you know what I mean? To say, come back a bit, like.
And that's it, and that's the exact point that you're making, because kids like that, they are going to take that literal. So if you say mark someone, for a kid who's got ALN or autism, they're literally going to stick and do it. They might do a very good job because they're marking it, marking this other player and not letting them go. But how much further would they take that, say, in terms of what they're comprehending, that decision making, that mental process? And there's a lot that comes into play. So there's obviously safeguarding for us, risk assessments. We have to look at how the kids perceiving that information, how we support them, and sometimes eliminating those restrictions that they may have, but also eliminating the risk whereby that kid who might have the autism might be marking someone else. So we don't want them to injure the other player because they've taken something literal.
Yeah, we had a guest in the lecture who was one of the lecturer's children, if you like, you know what I mean? And she basically, I said to her, what are you thinking right now? Like, and she said, well, I'm thinking that light's annoying me, pointed to the light, like, and I thought, yeah, like, I thought, she's thinking what I think she's thinking, like, but we don't always, you know what I mean? It might not have been like that. She could have been thinking about something else, you know what I mean? So.
Absolutely, and there's a lot that goes on, especially when you say have someone with ALN. There's a lot stimulating. So it might be 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night on a 3G pitch. So it's cold, it's wet, it's windy. They follow school. They're seeing a team train on the pitch next to them. They got the lights bright. They're hearing lots of sounds. They're trying to listen to the coach. They've got the ball in front of them. They got their teammates. They're trying to focus on the drill. They got parents on the outside. For them, that's a lot that is going on.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and sometimes even just generally, with all without disability, you can't have just look anyway. You know what I mean? Look, thinking what's going on. You think, they must be really, really, like stimulated. There must be a lot to think about. When you've got like autism or Asperger's or anything, on the autistic spectrum, especially. Really, look.
Absolutely. And when it comes down to those sessions, then how do you strip those sessions down to say the basics to give the best support for those kids? Then.
Well, when I first started, my sessions were okay, like, you know what I mean, but they weren't really capable for people with autism, like, and then, a lot of people said, who had autism said, well, I need these colour codes to be the same, otherwise I'll just get confused on where I'm going, so, change the cones, made sure they were the same colour, said to them, what do you need? You just have to ask them really what they want and what they, what they really need, to make them, go that bit further, really, like, and, I just try and make my sessions as inclusive as possible, really, obviously including wheelchair users as well, so, yeah. It's just one of them, try and be the best you can be, really, as a coach. Look.
I love that, and asking them what they want and what they need is really important as well, because sometimes we might try and consider and try and deliver what we want or put up the best session, but sometimes that isn't really hitting the points that they want or what they expect, and sometimes just that conversation can go a long way. But even something as simple as the same color cones, that can be really important. And whether you've got like a mix of cones, you say, right, I want you to pick up all the cones bar the white, for example, that's can be a clear instruction, but just having, say, white cones out, that eliminates then that extra information whereby you're going to pick up all these cones, and therefore it's just simpler in terms of transition, how it's laid out and what they're expecting then.
Yeah, definitely. You just say to them, like, there's a girl in one of the clubs I help out as well, and she just, she basically says to me, oh, can you make sure the colour codes are all the same today? I'm like, yeah, don't worry, I've got it covered, sort of thing, like, and she'll come over and say, oh, thanks for doing that, like, but as I say to her, you don't have to say thanks, like, you know what I mean, you just, I said what we should be doing anyway as coaches, like, you know what I mean, it's, what we do to help people like her, look.
Absolutely, and it's nice that they said thanks, and that comes across. But as you said, it's not something that they have to do. It's something that we should take in consideration anyway, and take it within our stride. So when you're making those sessions inclusive for wheelchair users, some coaches may think, right, football with the feet. You're going to see a typical 11v11. There's going to be goals scored. And sometimes, coaches in the back of my head, grassroots coaches who may be starting out listening to the pod, this is sort of like a learning curve for them and how much they can take away from coaches like yourselves. So they could listen, oh, right, I want one on disability, I want one on, say, high performance and so on. But when it comes down to that, they might not consider wheelchair users or expect that a wheelchair user might come to their session. So when it comes to your sessions, you have those wheelchair users. How do you include them in a typical, say, grassroots session of, say, U13s and a wheelchair users decided to turn up to your session?
We have to sort of always expect the wheelchair users going to come, and I always plan for wheelchair users just because, they could turn up unexpectedly and you think, you know what I mean, oh damn, I haven't planned something, but, you've got to plan for every, eventuality really, like, so you just make sure you've got a backup plan, allow them to use their hands if they can't use their feet, like, because I know people say, well, that's handball, isn't it? Like, it's like, well, it sort of is, but, to them, you know what I mean, if they can't use their feet, then what else can they use, you know what I mean? So you have to think of what they can do, not necessarily what they can't, like. Just, say to them, is there anything you need? Do you need a one-to-one support person? Like, think of all these things like that, they possibly need, you know what I mean? Things like if they need help to go to the toilet, do they need, support to do that? Like, just focus on what they're able to do themselves, really. Like.
Absolutely, and including them, and sometimes making that adaptability, even though it goes beyond, say, our expectations or how the game may look or how we perceive it, or even within the rules. Yes, there may be handball, but is that their ability whereby they can only catch and handle because they might not have any feeling in their legs, they might not have any legs at all. There's a range of reasons why they might be in that wheelchair. So when it comes down to it, how could we make sure they're included, and how could they make those decisions? And even though they're a wheelchair user, they might have a really good throw-in, for example. So that's how you could include them in one way. They might be in a position where you could help get them a refereeing, or they could be like the linesman, or they could be a team coach. And even though that eliminates some of the participation and inclusion in some way, you are involving them, but then how can we get them back on the flip side of that, of being involved in the game? So they could be in a position whereby they could create 1-2s and open up for a player going through on a through ball, so they could have the ball come in, they could catch it, and then they could split that through ball, for example. So just little things like that and tweaking them is something that could be really considered, part of that and within it, for example.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of people as well, you know what I mean, who don't really plan for these sort of people, like, and you think, well, okay, but what, if you want to be a coach, what on earth are you doing coaching if you don't want to plan for everybody, like, you know what I mean, you should be looking at, all the minority groups and things, you know what I mean, and thinking like, well, these can turn up to your session at any time, and it's not their fault, you know what I mean, they just want to take part and they just want the same opportunities as everyone else, especially wheelchair users. Like, I mean, there was a lad with autism, because I work at Anfield on a match day sometimes, like, and they sometimes say, oh, like, they won't say it, you know what I mean, not like literally the whole club say it, like, but some people will come up to me and just say, oh, well, there's a lad with autism here, like, why is he here? I'm like, what do you mean, why is he here? Like, he's here to watch the game, same as you, like, you know what I mean, it's it's a bit bonkers, like, you know what I mean, you think, well, you know what I mean, if you're gonna, like, come to a football match, then at least respect other people, disabled people or not, you know what I mean, are gonna come and watch the football match as well. Like.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with you there. And it's not eliminate them or stop or prevent them because they got a disability. And I think you've made a key point there, whereby these participants, these users, could turn up at any time. So if they do turn up at any time, it's not turn them away. It's not go, right, this session's not for you. How could you include them? And whether they work out or decide that it's not for them or not, the environment, the team, etc., the parent care or themselves make that decision, then you've given the opportunity to be part of that, and then they can go off and make their own decision. But to turn them away is very harsh, especially when all they want to do is they've seen the game of football in front of them and they just want to join in with, say, these bunch of kids or adults that they want to be part of, and they want to be part of that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, like I said, I spotted this lad with autism on the stairs, and I thought, well, okay, but why are you standing there on the stairs with your dad for a start? Like, when there's a football match outside and there's a sensory room in one of the stands, you know what I mean? So the first thing I did, went to my line manager, said, I need, the sensory room to be open. Can you take, this lad for me? Like, I mean, I got told off for going downstairs, but I thought, well, I'm not leaving someone there who potentially needs help, that, could actually, be involved in the game as well. Like, you know what I mean? So.
Of course, and as you say there as well, sensory, and that's a consideration. So even though we're on a flip side here and we're looking at a football stadium being part of a football match and having the facilities to be able to do that, if a stadium is lucky enough whereby they thought of that and they've included it. And I know, for example, when I was at Cardiff City, that was something that was being developed. So one of the coaches that I work with at the foundation, she was autistic herself, very neurodivergent. And she was very much involved in the consultation of how the design of that room looked. So she had a big input on that, and she led on a lot of the participants and sessions, and was included in match day. And when it came down to that sensory room, and even if we're in a football session as well, we don't have those facilities. Even the sensory things whereby, a kid not liking the feel of a bib or not liking the touch of the ball, or they're being overstimulated by, say, the grass or the 3G. There's a lot which they might not like and take into consideration. So just because they're taking off a bib because they don't like the color or they don't like the feel, doesn't mean they're being defiant and that's negative behavior. That just means they have a different need to everyone else.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, especially with people with autism as well, you know, like everyone, no one wants to wear the bibs, you know what I mean? But sometimes you have to, otherwise everyone just looks the same, you know what I mean? So, you know, a lot of the time, especially, you know, when you see Liverpool Foundation coaches, you know what I mean? You know, they'll sometimes say, okay, who wants to wear the bibs? And no one will want to wear it, like, you know what I mean? But you just say to them, well, okay, you know what I mean? Do rock, paper, scissors, and then, you know, it's a bit more fun, like, you know what I mean? You know, they think, oh, right, I'm autistic, but I've still got to wear the bib. But, you know, it's not so bad because I've actually, you know, lost a battle myself, like, you know what I mean? So,
I think that's good as well in terms of how you could create that to make sure that happens and they're wearing the bibs and just making it into fun games whereby then, you know, you've overcome a barrier that may be presented in one way so that can happen.
yeah, definitely. I mean, you just gotta like say to them, okay, you know, how do you want to decide who wears the bibs? You know, give them a lot of choices, like, you know what I mean. The sessions will go a lot smoother if you do, like, you know what I mean. I know people sometimes say, well, you sort of lose your authority a bit, like, but you know, if it means everyone's a little bit happy, then you know, you still have a bit of your authority, and you still gotta, you know, you still gotta let them have some choices. Otherwise, people won't even want to come back anyway.
So authority, choices, inclusion, adaptability as well, making it fun games. And there's just some key considerations to takeaways, as well as players turning up at any time, which is to be expected. Adapt and plan your sessions for, you know, all participants, regardless whether they're in the session yet or not, and make it as enjoyable. So, you know, there are some key takeaways for anyone listening right now, just within the first 17 minutes of the episode being recorded. But I think there are some key points to absolutely consider. And if you're not already doing it, definitely build on your sessions or reflect upon how they could do that. And it is hard because sometimes we go into coaching, especially grassroots coaches who might be, you know, mums, dads, sisters, brothers, or family members, and they're stepping up to take on a team because, you know, their child or someone that they're related to wants to be part of that, and that's naturally how they become involved. So when they do so, they might not expect those with additional learning needs or disability. They might not expect all the other responsibilities that comes with it, but for any of those coaches starting out, you can have that at any time, at any point. And for any participant, don't turn them away, be supportive of them.
Yeah, literally, you just got to give them a lot of chances and say to them, okay, you know, we're going to do this today, but is there a certain way you want to do it? Like, and if they, you know, they come up with all sorts, you know what I mean? You know, you don't even realize that they sometimes know more than you do, you know what I mean? It's, you know, it's a bit bonkers sometimes, you know, what they come up with. One of them apparently come up with like, apparently with putting a bomb on your foot, apparently is like one of the drill things. And I said, well, maybe not an actual bomb. I said, but you can have a bib if you want. Like I said, you know, you decide, like, you know what I mean? So I gave her 3 choices and said, hey, yeah, like, you know, which one do you want? Like, you know what I mean? And, you know, she went to pick the bib, like, you know, because she didn't mind the bib, like. And, you know, all of a sudden you had to put the bomb on your foot and then kick it up and catch it. And I was like, okay, like, that's, you know, a bit different, like, but, you know, I was like, that's your, you know, your drill if you want, like.
Absolutely, it might be a bit different, but if that fits them and that's what they look forward to, and you know, next week they could go, all right, Coach Sophie, can we do this? Then suddenly they've got that engagement and participation. They've got something that they can look forward to, and they've taken ownership over it. It's something that you've added into your bank as well, and just something which could take 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or something that's so little might be massive to them, and they could leave that session. You might do a combination of things, but they could come away and go, oh, Sophie done this today and done that, and they might be absolutely bouncing off that, and then the next morning they're still thriving from it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you hear kids, you know, from like, you know, when they scored the goal the weekend and people are still, you know, sort of like talking about it, you know, 2-3 days later. And it's like, well, it's the same for any kid with, you know, SEND as well. Like, you know what I mean? You know, if they score, like probably, you know, like say if we're playing against Liverpool and Liverpool score against us, you know what I mean? They'll be thinking about that for the next probably week or so, like, because they'll still be, you know, really happy that they scored, you know, because they might not have thought they could do that before. Like.
And that's it. And if they didn't think that they could do it before, and then they have that ability, or they've been enabled to do so, then they're going to take that away. And that's, you know, you're therefore having that impact upon them through the coaching. So therefore, you've maybe delivered a coaching point where you didn't plan it in or didn't expect to deliver that, but that's something for them which has been a, you know, a tick or a takeaway or something which they've achieved and accomplished, and you can be really happy with that, even though you haven't planned that India session.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, as I keep saying, you know, I mean, you just got to give people chances, and you know, it's about like, you know, giving them a lot of choice and saying, okay, you know, we are doing this drill today, but you can choose the way you want. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be, oh, this is the drill and this is the way we're doing it. Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people, you know, in the coaching world who are a bit ableist, like, and they don't want to see people with disabilities within sessions. But then it's like, well, you know what I mean? You're kind of going to come up against them all the time, so you just gotta let them, you know, say to them what do you need, what do you need support with, and then give them the choice. It's not really that difficult, I don't think, personally. Look.
And that's another key highlight within itself as well. And giving them the choice in that involvement is absolutely key. And sometimes inclusive sessions can be really difficult to deliver because you might have a high performing team in the sense that they are on a really good point. You've got some really technical players in there. They've gelled well, they've bonded together, and it's led them being in a good position. So they are high performing. So therefore, you have one or two participants who want to join and become part of that, and they have additional learning needs. And they might have ADHD, they might have autism, and suddenly the behaviors of the team might change. The expectations across the sessions may be different. So how you handle that and manage that is really important as well. And just because it might take away from the high performing team in a way, you're then becoming an inclusive team, providing opportunities that can have high performers. So it's just changing that context to make sure they're included. And it's just how you manage that behavior a bit differently. So you might have, say, rules, which I look at them as guidelines and expectations. And some of these kids, with ADHD might fall below these expectations. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to bend the guidelines entirely all the time. Sometimes we might just have to make sure we get them involved in the session and continue work with them to, therefore, once they're within those parameters and guidelines, they're achieving that. Because we can set them up for success with that. But sometimes that might look a little bit different to what expectations have been. And it's just that process which might take a while. So from the outset, that might look different. But it's just a process which we have to endure and go through. And when those parameters and guidelines can be adhered to because we've been able to deliver this key work, then the success and how that may look will return after a period of time. So that's a consideration for those on the outset to really consider as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting. Like me and my friend were looking up to see how many disability, like football clubs, specifically, around the country. And we were looking and we found there was like, every 2,000. So we thought, well, why isn't this 2,000, football clubs working together, to create one goal, for inclusion? Like, you know what I mean? It's, you start to think, well, okay, you know what I mean? Every county FA's got their own disability league. Most different, not everyone's got one. You know what I mean? So why wouldn't all those leagues come together and think, oh yeah, okay, we're creating opportunity for inclusion, but we do it, as a unit, not just, oh, you go to your Manchester FA, you go to Liverpool, you go to Stockport, you know what I mean? You go wherever, like, you know what I mean? And I think everyone just needs to come together a bit more and not work against each other necessarily.
I love that point. I love what you say there as well, and that's great research to even see that. So that's a great figure that we have. But considering the geographical nature of, say, England alone, where you're residing, and how many people live there, that's quite a small number in consideration to the total participants across the game. So if we looked at total participants in the game and then looked at total with disabilities and clubs, I'm sure that percentage starts to decrease as we look at the data a little bit more. But that interlinks really nicely with an upcoming episode with Sophie Barton, and she started Barton FC Inclusive. And that's such a great club in terms of what she says there. And what she really highlighted, which is what you said as well, without you listening to that episode or me even bringing it up, there's a lot of these clubs which are coming together. So she's trying to deliver work in partnership with the other FAs and other clubs around her, whereby those opportunities can be created. So such as pre-season friendlies or interlinking how coaches could go and learn off each other. How could more programs be delivered across, say, one FA to the other? And therefore you're creating a bigger pathway, a bigger network. And that's something which is lacking at the minute, which is hopefully something that's going to grow. It's just that partnership working and how other clubs can work hand in hand. Yes, we have rivalries between clubs, and one club might want to be bigger than the other, and one club might want more participants. But that doesn't have to mean that we stop working together to create the best basis for everyone involved, especially with disability and additional needs.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, we've got a few partnerships, like say the Liverpool Foundation and things, and I said to Greenbank, when we were developing the football camps, well, we've got all these things here. We've got everything in the community. We've got Liverpool Foundation. With this players that live nearby. Jamie Carragher came to watch the Disability Inclusion Festival a couple of years ago. Why can't we say to him again, okay, you come and talk to these participants and maybe do them an inclusive session? You know what I mean? It's not, I mean, I say it's not that hard. It's hard to get in touch with the players, but once you get in touch with them, it's not hard to deliver an inclusive session if you do it, properly and you do it together.
Absolutely. And then over time, in that experience that comes in, I work in a school and I work in behavior. So some of the behaviors that I have you know, I might have kids with ALN, so they might have ADHD, they might have autism, you might then have, you know, a range of other disabilities, and then you've got additional learning needs which kick in as part of that, and every different need of the kids mixed in all together, creating behaviour and how that looks. And being in school can be hard because we're quite a mainstream inclusive school, but we still have, again, those guidelines for those kids to adhere to, and sometimes we bend them so that they can be inclusive, and sometimes we do what's right for them. And it's hard because not everyone sees it that way. And just even when I was saying that, then I'm thinking, how might that be perceived to someone listening and them going, do you know what, that's the wrong thing to do? Sometimes it can be, sometimes it's the right thing to do. So sometimes we make those decisions because we have to make it within that moment at that time for that child, and we have to try and make it as successful for them to try and get through their day within behavior. And sometimes just by understanding these kids, I take it within my stride because of my experience and my characteristic and who I've ended up enabling myself to be, that I'm not going, all right, this kid's got autism, oh, it's going to be really tough tomorrow. You know, we're not going to cope. This kid should be, you know, they shouldn't come into school tomorrow because it's going to be easy for them at home, have a day out and then come back in. And there was one day where that happened, and it was just a case of, right, let's get a booth down there because he likes to sit in a booth. Let's get all his favorite drawings printed out because he loves to do that. Let's provide him with a space whereby he can break out. Let's then talk him through the day. Let's have a discussion how it's going to look. Let's give him a walkthrough. Let's give him that space. Let's give him one-to-one if I've got the staff available to do so. And then we're able to sort of build and then evaluate as the day goes on. And it ended up working really well because he was really inclusive with the group that I had at the end. And he ended up delivering a game of Uno to the group on his own accord, and he was so included. He was giving advice, he was telling the rules of the game, and it ended up being a really competitive game and really enjoyable. And that was because the parameters that we created and the environment that we supported him in allowed him to go off and have his own space, explore, and then realize he could be included without too much push and too much hit back from him. So we had a really nice balance, and it was just, how could we adapt this? What do we need to do? What do I need to sort of take away? And how could I work with this young person to make sure they've had a successful day?
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got to, you know, I mean, obviously in schools and in SCN, just in general, like, you know what I mean, you've got to, you know, think what's best for them. And, you know, sometimes as the coach, you know, we forget that it's not about us, you know what I mean, but it's about, you know, about the participants as well. Like, you know, okay, if they win, you know, it's great, but if they don't, it's not the end of the world, you know what I mean? You try again tomorrow, you know what I mean? You just, you know, you keep going and you just say to them, okay, you know, we tried this, what ways do you think we could potentially win next time? Like, and, you know, you say to them, okay, you know, let them put the hand up. If they've got the ball, they can talk. And, you know, if they haven't got the ball, then they've got to listen to the person who's talking, you know what I mean? So it's just things like that to help them, you know, to actually realise, you know, what's being said and who's saying it. Like,
I completely agree with that as well, because, you know, some autistic kids, some parents and, you know, some stakeholders may go, all right, that doesn't work for them. We have to allow them to have the space. Or if they take the floor, that they're on that leadership, or they're going to take leadership naturally, etc., or take the talking point. But that's not really how that can happen. And again, you know, it's that flip side about what I'm thinking between participant and delivering and how this may be perceived. But, you know, we can create those expectations for those kids. If someone's talking, hang on, you know, Joey's talking, you're going to have your turn next when you've got the ball. And just by instilling that and repeating that and that process, they're going to understand that that is going to work, and they just have to adhere to it at a period of time. And it is hard because you talk about ALN and disabilities and how, you know, we want parameters, how, you know, we build in expectations. And some people might disagree with that, but there is processes and ways that work, especially for them. I've seen it happen. It can happen. It just takes a period of time. And it's just their mental processing. The more that we give it and the more consistency that's there, the more that they're going to take away and then start adhering to it. And we can have success with them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sometimes it's why I try and like do my sessions over an hour and a half, you know what I mean? Because it could take them like, you know, 15 minutes to process something. So by the time we've got stuck in, you know, that's taken already 25 minutes. Like, and then they need a break, you know, because they're overstimulated, whatever, you know what I mean? That's probably like another 5 or 10 minutes. So you just got to think, okay, you know, this person needs a break now, like, you know what I mean? You know, give them a bit of time. Don't over push them. And, you know, when they're ready, they'll come out, you know what I mean? You know, they'll do it when they're ready, really. Like.
And that's another key consideration there. You know, we might be a stickler for times and therefore we might only have an hour to deliver a session, and we might be like, right, 50 minutes here, 50 minutes that, 50 minutes, 50 minutes. So we've got 4 blocks of 50 minutes. Then within that, we're blocking again. And then we're trying to transition, and we're trying to make sure all the coaching points are delivered. But just by realizing, right, you know what, it might actually take 5 minutes for them to transition. We might have to plan in, say, 4 or 5 minute breaks. Therefore, that's 25 minutes of my session gone. I've got 35 minutes left. So realistically, you've only got 35-minute contact time. So it's like, right, that might actually take a little bit slower. So you might go, right, I might do 20 minutes and 15 minutes. And that might be a really basic looking session on paper, but it might be a really good and rewarding session, which you are delivering. And even though you've got 35 minutes contact out of 60, for these participants, that's a good amount of time for them to really have. And they're taking a lot away within that, because they might struggle to do an hour-long session.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially one of the other issues at the moment is disability clubs don't get a lot of funding. You get like £1,000 a year, and then that's it. And you think, well, you know what I mean? You know, people want to go places like Manchester, or they want to go down for the next tournament. You know what I mean? That could be £600 just by the time you've paid for the bus. Then you've got to find a way to help, you know, the coaches, you know, in some ways, you know, who are doing it for free. You know what I mean? They've got to pay for their lunch, even maybe stay over. You know what I mean? It's going to be more than £1,000. Like, and if the FA sees that, you know what I mean, you know, they say, oh yeah, here's £1,000. It's like, well, great, but you know, that's not going to cover. That'll just about cover the pitch, you know what I mean, or cover the bus, you know what I mean. That's not going to cover everything. By the time you've, you know, gone everywhere and you've said to them, okay, here we are, you know, you guys got the bus for stopping in an hour, and they'll think, oh yeah, we're stopping in an hour, but I'll think an hour and a dot, not like an hour and 5 minutes. So you've got to say to them, okay, it could be like another 10 minutes after an hour we stop, like, you know, all these sorts of things. So you really do have to plan a lot when it comes to tournaments and things like.
And that's it. So logistically and operationally wise, as well as that funding which comes into it, how that looks sustainable is very different. So for any coach or any person part of a board or anything like that who may be thinking of setting up a disability program, you know, real consideration, don't rely on funding. How can you make it sustainable? And sometimes sustainability is hard because participants come and go. They might find, you know, a more inclusive club. They might not want to be part of, say, an inclusive program, but they want a disability only, and you might not deliver that. So therefore, they might be at another club. Or even if you are looking at doing disability only at your club as a next step for whereby you've identified that you have a lot of inclusive participants, and that's great. You know, funding doesn't really cover it all, because as you said there, you know, you've got referees, pitch bookings, you've got, you know, hall hire all year long. Then you might have winter booking, and then you've got coach education, then you've got bus hire, then you've got travel, then you've got games, and then you've got affiliation, and the list of you know, investments continues to grow, and that can be hard as well, and that's why sometimes some clubs deter from these programs, which is such a shame then, because you know, there's so many participants, you know, missing out because, you know, sometimes they can't afford it, and that's fair enough due to the stature of the club. But for clubs, say, who have a seniors and might be going, right, we want a £2,000 budget for our senior team every week to pay them, it takes away completely from those who could really benefit from a grassroots sport, which is the purpose of grassroots. But yet grassroots want a £2,000 a week or £2,000 a fortnight budget for a first team football.
Yeah, well, I mean, years ago they used to have the England Learning Disability, and then it got closed because they reckon they have no money, you know what I mean? But then it's like, okay, but where did the money go that you originally had? You know, like, was it the funding, you know, from like Sport England or something, or was it, you know, that people didn't want to pay because obviously they've got a disability and they just want to enjoy football, you know what I mean? There's, you know, there's so many different things, that the reasons that could have closed, you know what I mean? And Special Olympics is great, like, you know what I mean? You know, you go and, you know, you go and sit in your session and, you know, you do all your things, but then it's like, well, what are you competing for if you're just training every week? Like, you know what I mean? It's great to compete for things, but where's the thing? Like, where you go to the tournament, you know, you maybe come second place, for example, like, you know, where's that experience for the participants? Like,
and that's it as well. What experience can they take away? And, you know, even by traveling to a game or getting tickets to an event as well, that's going to be massive for some of the inclusive young people that we have. But even if you're delivering a disability program, you know, you say you've got a year long that you're trying to plan out for, they don't need, say, 2 sessions a week plus a game. So they don't need 3 contacts a week, just maybe 1 session and maybe 1 game on the weekend. That's all they need. So you can already eliminate some cost there. And it's not like you're cutting a lot away. You're creating a nice program which is meeting the needs of the young person without overstimulating them.
yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, the Liverpool Ability Council League, I don't know if it's the same for Manchester as well, but we have ours, you have our games once a month and you train once a week. So you train for 3 weeks. Go to the game, you know what I mean, and train the week after, and you just keep training, you know, the whole time. So we don't stop, you know what I mean. We train through the whole summer as well. And if you need a break, you just say, okay, I need a break this week, like, and the coach will go, yeah, that's fine, you know. See you next week, whatever, like, you know what I mean. And you know, you still come, you know what I mean, as long as you're, you know, committed and things, like, then, you know what I mean, you should be getting the games every weekend, if you ask me personally, not just once a month, because, juniors get, one game more or less every weekend. So why doesn't disability get the same?
Of course, and that's another key consideration as well. And it's hard for coaches because we have that accountability as well. So only this morning I dropped my parents off, hence why we had to rearrange. But I used to coach on a Saturday morning, so I used to be at the football pitch 8:30, set up, and then kids would come in for 9. And I was only thinking this morning, I'm so glad that I'm not delivering sessions anymore, whereby I have to make the decision whether I'm going to keep session on this morning, get drenched and be out delivering, or whether I cancel the session. Then if it ends up being brighter, I'm looking out the window going, oh no, I dropped the clanger there. But you have to make that decision on a Saturday morning. It's hard. So when you've got kids with, say, disabilities and additional needs, they've been looking forward to this session. So you've got a two-way process here, whereby you, on the consider hand, you could be like, right, I cancel a session because it's wet, all this, etc. And I'm going to eliminate the risks and issues for these kids, and I'm going to keep them in a warm safeguard, etc. So these kids then, they don't have a session, and therefore it's completely fine. Or you go B, right, we deliver it outside, they're overstimulated, they're getting wet, they're not adhering to the needs. There's a lot more considerations, there's a lot more risks. There's maybe muddy, etc. And then parents are unhappy, and then how do we deal with that? ALN kids with disability autism may not like the rain, and therefore might put them off. Or C, you go right, I'm going to move the session indoors, and therefore I'm going to keep it on and try and deliver that. So for A, if you cancel it, then a lot of these kids, how do they cope with that? Because it's something that they've been looking forward to, and then at home, that's for parents and carers to deal with. And that we can't manage that, we can't mitigate those circumstances. That's just sometimes the way it goes, and parents understand that. But if we have to cancel in worst case scenarios, then we have to cancel. But it's just difficult then on that flip side, whereby those kids who were looking forward to it, how they deal with it. B, you deliver it, and then you've got everything to consider. Or C, you move it, and then how do these kids cope with moving from something that's so familiar? So if they were looking forward to a grass session and they've been on the grass for, say, 8 weeks in a row, then they're going to expect grass, and then suddenly you've gone indoors with no grass, you're inside, there's light. There's a lot to consider within that as well. So it's whether you cancel it or whether you keep it on. You've got sort of a pros and negatives to both, and there's no sort of win-win however you pull the string.
Yeah, I mean, it depends obviously on the person physically as well. If I've been playing on Astro for ages, for example, then you've got used to it, and then you go and play on grass and you're thinking like, oh damn, I'm going uphill now, you're not used to having to go uphill. You don't want to on the Astro pitch, and we were playing Wrexham in the Built Inclusion tournaments, a while ago, and it wasn't because we were on grass they beat us, but we thought, we're actually not used to playing on grass, maybe we need to do this, maybe once or twice a year or something, just get used to it, because we're so used to playing on Astro all the time, and we thought, okay, so and so's out of position here, and where's X gone, and you wonder where they are, and then you think you can't see as well, I don't think, on a grass pitch when you're playing, so that potentially overstimulates the people who've got autism as well.
And those who can be very sensitive to touch as well. So back to my friend earlier who worked for Cardiff City, she's very sensitive to touch. You can only have it for a matter of seconds. So therefore you go from, say, grass to indoors. Now, depending on grass and where you're at, grass can be soft, but it might not be as sensitive to an autistic child who might be very sensitive, whereby once you're going into hard flooring within an indoor surface, they might only cope for a matter of minutes or less than a minute, and that could be game over in session for them. And sometimes that's hard for us as coaches, because we're looking at them going, I failed, I want them to complete the session. And then we're considering that, and we're taking that on board as coaches because we want the best for everyone. But sometimes we're trying to do the best by putting that session on, but if they can't cope with it and they leave, I think the parent carer understands we try to do our best, but they just can't cope with it. We can only say fair enough, and next week we're back on the grass, and we can just get them back into that process, saying, look, this happened for this reason. Next week we're going to be back doing this, and just helping them understand. And just that, conversation can really help support them within that process.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got to help them get used to change. I mean, there was a lot, like saying, who, never used to like change, wouldn't come on the pitch, if the situation changed, whereas now he'll come on all the time because he thinks, oh, yeah, it's going to change anyway. Things can happen, it's not, the coach's fault, and, you just think sometimes, well, okay, we'll help you adapt to this change, and it took a while, but he got used to it, so, even just as a player, we can help make a difference as well, obviously when I'm not coaching, I'm, I'm playing, like, you know what I mean? But, I say to him, come on, come and like stand, like neighbours, you know what I mean? And you say to him, what position do you want? And he says, oh, I'll go up front. Yeah, okay, like, you stay there up front. I said, but I'll tell you if you have to come back. And sometimes, you look and you think, is he listening? Like, but you must think, like, what are you thinking as well? Like, you know what I mean? Are you're overstimulated because there's so many people on the pitch and you're not used to having 14 people just randomly run at you, or 13 others in this case, like.
And that's it as well, and that's a consideration within itself. And when it just comes down to that, then, and say that you're allowing them to go up front, but I'll tell you when to come back. You're using a choice of language within that as well, in that dialogue. So focusing on language and dialogue, then, when you did plan these deliver these sessions on these programs, do you have say a set language that you use with your kids with disability and ALM, for example, or is it just considerate of what speech do I not use? How can I use this? Or do you go in with, say, a set script and how that could work over a season? So any coach who could come in and cover Sophie, right, I've got these autistic children today, right, they don't like these words. These words are going to be important. This helps them understand the game a little bit more because this is what Sophie's doing to develop the game and their knowledge, and then she's going to expand on it. How do you go about approaching that?
I mean, I always say to them, at the start, like, when I first meet them, how do you want me to speak to you? Like, and they'll say, like, oh, I want you to be nice, but I don't want you to be, like, if I'm taking the mick, I want you to tell me, like, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, okay, like, but it's obviously certain things I won't say, you know what I mean? Because that's not appropriate to say, like, but I'll say to them, like, oh, are you coming to the match on Saturday? And they might be like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm going to come, like, and then they'll forget that they said it, you know what I mean? 20 minutes later, so you just have to remind them, and you just have to be gentle with them and just say, okay. I'll remind you on, say, Thursday night, back by your parents, say, like, you know what I mean, make sure that you've got your shin pads, everything. And if they say, oh, yeah, I forgot it, it's like, well, it's okay, I've got a spare set of shin pads, you can have them, and I'll happily not play if it means they can play, like, you know what I mean? It's, you've got to just be, obviously not too gentle, you know what I mean, but gentle enough with them so they want to get to know you, like, and then, obviously don't let them take the mick at the same time, but, say to them, okay, this is the boundary, this is where you have to go, and if once they get used to it, they'll be fine. Like, you know what I mean? You just have to be nice to them, as I keep saying, like, you know what I mean? Just, ask them what they want and, focus on them. Like.
And that's for any coach who's listening. And even if you're starting out with a foundation or any coaching platform or wherever you're at and what you're doing, and even grassroots, sometimes you can overthink a session and even overthink. So you might be asked to take a disability session, or you might be asked to take a session which is inclusive. And some coaches can overthink that as well and be like, all right, how do I do this? How do I do that? And that is good that they're thinking that way, but sometimes don't overthink it. Just be aware of their needs, understand, go in with some language, set some boundaries, have a conversation with them, have some, backups, how you could include them in other ways, and just utilize, the parent, carer, or stakeholder on the side, and have support of your assistant coach if you need it. So if you need to go off and have a one-to-one conversation with this child, your assistant coach can step in and do that, or vice versa, whereby they can continue to deliver the session, so you can have that conversation. But it's just don't overthink it yourself. Just go in and understand how it could be, what the worst case scenario could be, and get ready just to have a fun session and learn. And if you deliver it again next week, then you're going to understand that participant even more.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting, to be fair. Like, there's a coach in cricket who I play for, because I play for Cheshire Disabled Cricket as well. And the coach always says, what, do you want to take a lap? Meaning, like, he'll walk around and speak to you, like, you know what I mean? And, you think, well, you know what I mean? That could be good for a person, of autism, you know what I mean? They can get the feelings out, like, you know what I mean? They can say what they're thinking. And then the next thing is, you know what I mean? You think, oh, yeah, they go back on the pitch happy then, like, in cricket or in any sport, really, like, and you just think, well, okay, you know what I mean? Maybe, it could be that you just walk around the pitch, you know what I mean? You just say to them, how are you feeling today? Is something stopping you? And if they say, yeah, I'm a bit overstimulated, you say, okay, yeah, take a 5-minute break after we finish this lap, and then come back and see how you feel. And, you don't have to join in, but there's no pressure, look.
And then say what they mean as well. I think that, when we're working with someone with additional needs or a disability, they might not have any key consideration in terms of what context or perspective. So they might just come out, say something, and that's just how they've said it. And sometimes we might be taken back by it, but just by understanding them or knowing them, just going, all right, I'm not going to take that on the chin. I'm not going to take it to heart. That's just the way they said it. And that's just that, sometimes we don't have to look into things too much. We just need to understand, yeah, that's the way little Joey is. That's the way he says things. There's no real malicious meaning behind it. He just comes out and says it because that's the way he feels, and he hasn't got the thought mentality to process it beforehand, think about all the key considerations and deliver it another way. He's just come out, he said it. We just got to take that and move on sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, you do have to have some emotional intelligence, like, you know what I mean? You know, and you just think, well, okay, you know what I mean? They might say something, but they not actually realize what they've said. And you might say to them, think about that again, like, you know what I mean? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to say that, like, you know what I mean? But, you know, already you've made them reflect and you've made them think, oh, right, okay, I probably shouldn't have said it like that, like, you know what I mean?
And it just shows that these things can be done, and we can support ALN learners and disabilities. So we don't have to, bend and flex the guidelines as much as possible. Sometimes there is a place for it, but it doesn't mean that we have to do it every time. And just by working with these participants, we can create those clear guidelines, as you said before. And it wraps around in terms of how we can work with people with disability and make sure that the sessions are inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's about educating the parents as well. I mean, the parents probably still coming to terms that the child's got autism or ADHD or, whatever, like, you know what I mean? And you think, well, okay, you know what I mean? They probably get away with it at home, but there's some things that, probably shouldn't be done during the session. But you just say to the parents, okay, so-and-so did this today, but, next week, can we focus on trying to get more included, things like that. Like, and you go, oh, yeah, okay. You know what I mean? It's not, it's not too difficult if you can get everyone to, basically work together, you know what I mean? And that's the key thing coming from this episode generally, you know what I mean? It's getting people to work together and not being against each other, really. As long as you work together, you can do it most of the time.
Absolutely, and that's another key consideration as well when working with on inclusive programs and with disabilities. Work together, understand what you can do with the parents, and if you're setting up a program, for example, give yourself some time, get to know the parents, get to know the children, or participants of an older age, for example. Give them a walk through how sessions may look, introduce yourself, show them the environment, set the expectations and guidelines. Set up some contracts in a way as well, so you can help support that. Have everything prepared in terms of being able to adapt and support that. Make sure that you have a sustainable program. Understand that things may take longer and a little bit more process. You don't have to overstimulate, and we don't have to deliver 3-4 sessions a week. We could have a nice routine program which works, and work with the stakeholders that we have. So consistently stay in touch with the parents and carers, etc. How could we utilize them? How could we support them? Sometimes we might have phone call conversations saying, oh, little Joey's not coming tonight because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, we'll see him on Saturday, and we'll try and get this in place so we can really help in the process that he's had this week, and then just be able to support that, be part of that as you go on to do it within your sessions if you're considering delivering them. Or if you're not doing that, then how could you do it that now in terms of what your programs look like?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always try and keep everything the same. Like, going back to the lab before, the one who always had to stay up front, like, I try and keep everything the same, on the match day. Like, because at one point I was, we sort of in charge of the disability team at one point because there was no one. There was my manager, but he had to go to, and help the other teams because we got 4 teams in total. And you think, like, yeah, okay, like, you know what I mean? Here's your kit, say them all to get changed, and then if you're getting changed, like, and then for some reason, what would happen, the county FA or, something else would change the kickoff time, and it's like, well, okay, I'm going to help so-and-so get over this now, look, because it might take him 15 minutes to process that it's not going to be till 11 o'clock that he kicked off when it was supposed to be 10. So you try and play a game, with them, whatever, like, and, you just, have a bit of fun, really, like, try not to tire anyone out too much, and let them just enjoy themselves for that next hour, really, look.
And there's a lot that's important there as well. Just make sure that you're not overtiring them, but you've got something there which is having fun and that you can overcome maybe something that's arisen. Can you adapt and think on your feet to be able to do so, and supporting that process within it? So there's a lot that just even take away without that, but it just shows that simple processes can be effective processes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you don't want to overcomplicate things. Like, you can, try and cover too much sometimes in one session, and you think, like, well, don't overdo it. Like, by the time they process that, it could be like if you started your session at 9, it could be 11 before they've, got used to it, and before they've done anything, like, and things. But you just gotta let them, like I say, come out of their own shells, really, and encourage them to reflect on their own game as well. Like.
Absolutely, and that reflection point is really important as well for both coaches and participants. So we talk about reflection for us, and making sure we're not centerfold of these sessions. It's not all about us, not all what we want to do. It's not all about the way we want to do things. So including these participants within that is really important. But ensuring that they understand and making sure that they reflect is really important part of the process as well.
Well, you've got these players, like in junior and in disability, like, they're trying to be better than the next person on the next team. And you're thinking, like, what are you trying to be better than them for? Like, it doesn't matter, what someone else really thinks of you, like, it's not about trying to be better than anyone else, but trying to be better than you were maybe the day before, So trying to think, well, okay, this player is really good, but And, you know what I mean? Not saying unnecessarily, I can do better. It's just that, you know, you probably will get there, you know what I mean? But it'll take a bit more time than it probably takes the next person to do something like.
And that's it as well. It might just take a little bit more period of time for some participants to gain things and achieve the success outcomes than others. And there's completely nothing wrong with that. So as they're doing that, you know, timeframes might not fit in or they might not sync. Just be prepared to support them and how you can do that on and off the pitch as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it took me a lot longer to get to university than some of my friends, like, because my friends did A-levels, you know, a lot of things, you know what I mean? And whereas I couldn't do A-levels because my school didn't do them, you know what I mean? So, you know, you have to sort of start me all over again, really, like, go back to doing the level 2 because I hadn't done it for a while, and then go back to doing level 3, and then before you knew it, like, all right, I got there eventually, probably, like, 3 years later, but, you know, it's done, like, you know what I mean? So, you know, by the time I finished, I'll be not the same as everyone else, like, but I'll have, you know, gone on a slightly different journey, but still got to the same place, like.
And that's the important thing there. You might have had a slightly different journey, but as long as you want to get to that place and it leads you into a place where everyone else is, you know, it doesn't mean that you have to go right, have to be in with everyone else. But in that case, then it's really good that you've been able to do that and end up in that place as well. You've gone on a different journey. Sometimes there may have been ups and downs with that, but it's a good learning curve. It's a process and a journey that's suited you, and it's one that's allowed you to gain what you've wanted to gain. And it sounds like you're doing positive things and doing really well in the world of coaching so far, Sophie.
Well, try my best, like, you know what I mean? I mean, there's times when I think, oh, I probably shouldn't have, you know, done that, like, you know what I mean? You know, like, some of my sessions are a bit complicated, or, you know, like, you know what I mean? I'm probably not thinking, you know, sometimes, oh, how bad with autism's going to see them, but you just think, oh, yeah, you know, I've got to change this, like, and then sometimes one session can actually make 2 sessions, like, so you can do one thing, like, first, and then do, you know, the next thing later, like, you know, it doesn't have to all be in one session, really, look.
And again, that's another important point. We don't have to do everything within one session. What one session might be 2 sessions, and that's really important as well. And I've been in that position, and that's just something that's part of learning and working with our groups and the young players or players that we have, whereby you know, we try to overplan, we try to get a lot in, we want to squeeze every second out of an hour session. But sometimes it's okay, you know, if we got an opportunity to expand our program, let's do it, especially at grassroots level. We haven't got a massive curriculum to follow. We're not in a big club. We're not a high school or a college. It's our own program, and you know, sometimes clubs might have their own curriculum, etc. But typical grassroots, let's just delay it. Let's get it into 2 sessions. Let's re-emphasize things. Let's get those building blocks. Let's have a little bit of consistency. If we deliver 15 minutes of one technical session last week, we don't have to get rid of it. We can just do 15 minutes the exact way next week as well. So therefore that consistency is built up, and they've had half hour rather than 15 minutes. So that's again another one. We don't have to squeeze everything into 1 hour. Let's expand. Let's make it into 2 sessions, for example. Yeah,
because you see coaches, especially, you know, like sometimes, you know, I look on the other pitches, you know, when I'm coaching, and I'm thinking, you know, to sometimes going, oh, you should have got this by now. It's like, well, not necessarily, like, you know what I mean? It could take them a bit longer, you know, if they, you know, even without a disability, they might take a bit of time to get it, like, so you just think, well, you know, just give them time, like, you know what I mean? And if they didn't get this session, you try it again either the next session or the session after, and, you know, you try something else, you know what I mean? You just keep going until they get it. And, you know, you just say to them, you know, what's, you know, making this hard for you? Like, you know, what can I do to help you, like?
And that's it as well, and that's a massive consideration for any coach as well. So as you touched upon where you're currently at, what you're doing, you're working towards your level 6, which is fantastic and a really good accolade within itself. But when you set out into coaching, did you set yourself a goal in terms of where you wanted to go and what you wanted to achieve, or is it sort of going, I would like to do this, so I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to see where I'm at that point? How have you sort of approached that?
Well, to start with, like, when I first left school, like, you know what I mean, that's when I did health and social care for a bit, like, and then I just found, like, when I finished the course, I thought, like, what am I doing sitting on a desk, like, you know what I mean? And my mum said, you know, like, well, you know, this probably need to be the last time, you know, you move now, because, you know what I mean, you're getting towards your 20s, like, because I was, I think I was 19 at this point, like, and your education healthcare plan will run out, you know, eventually, like, you know what I mean, so you'll have to, you know, really think about these next few years, like, and I said to her, well, eventually, I said, I want to end up at, you know, university, like I said, you know, eventually, work within, you know, disability football, hopefully with the FA one day, like, you know what I mean, you can dream, can't you, like, you know what I mean, you know, it might happen one day, like, but, you know, you have to think, you know, and think, well, you know what I mean, you know, this is, you know, what I've been wanting to do for a long time, like, and I've wanted to make a difference for people, and, you know, all you really, you know, can do, I mean, you can see these disability sport development officer jobs, like, you know what I mean, and you think that'd be a good place to start, like, and then you just sort of keep going, really, and look and think, well, you know, one day, you know, maybe head of football at the FA would, you know, be a good job, like, you know what I mean, disability wise anyway.
And it sounds great, and hopefully that you'll get there and get to be able to do what you're doing. But that impact in terms of those participants and those people that you work with is fantastic, and also rewarding in terms of what you do now. And they're very lucky to have you coaching and working with them. And I think that's again a consideration as well. So you found yourself and you asked yourself that question: what am I doing sat behind the desk? But it's also then a consideration from your mum supporting that. Right, you're in your 20s now. How's this going to look? And that's something as well, which I've sort of considered in my own head as well. I'm like, I'm 26 now. Where do I want to be at 30? How does this look now? Is time, time ticks on, because we always say, right, we got time in this, but we do have to consider that and that value of time. But sometimes just working out and seeing where we want to go. But that's great that you've got that aspiration to get to those levels, and I hope that you do, because I think you'd make a perfect fit and really contribute to the game even further than you have already. And it sounds like you're on the right path to do so, and hopefully it works out in terms of what you want to do and where you want to go, Sophie.
Well, hopefully one day, like I say, I've got, like about 45, 50 years left, working wise, I know, because like the retirement age will probably be something like 75 by the time I retire, like, but, I said to my mum, I said, until, we get disability football where it actually should be, I said, I said, I might as well work till I'm 90, you've got to keep going and thinking about these participants really, like, and I said to my mum the other day, one day if a disability academy came up, I'd work in that, like, as well, but it's just seeing what's out there really, like, and this time next year be applying for jobs. So hopefully something in disability will be available by then, as well as hopefully doing the masters as well, part-time.
That's incredible, especially doing your masters and hopefully something coming up full time. And the masters isn't easy. And again, my friend is studying for her masters. She's just in the middle of writing out a PhD application. And I'm like, wow, that is incredible. And sometimes we discuss what she's doing on a master's. And I'm like, right, you're really putting me off doing this after I complete my undergrad. But, that's incredible to get onto your master's and what you're doing. So massive kudos to you and what you're doing.
Oh, thanks again. Like, it's great to, be able to come on, and like say, share, some of the things that we should be doing in disability, like reflecting and, thinking about some of the things that we, may not necessarily think of all the time, especially with disabled people. Like, over between 20 and 29 are considered inactive, percent are considered inactive, like, and you think, well, okay, like, it's only 20 to 29%, but how many is that, if you think about the population of Manchester, is that 29% of Manchester, or is that 20 to 29% of the whole country? Because that must be a massive number if you were to actually try and work the whole thing out. Look.
Absolutely, that's a huge percentage as well in terms of that as well. And we have to really support these participants and these people by remaining part of the sport. And how can they become lifelong participants? So how can we set up more programs? How can we work more hand in hand? What partnerships can be set up? How can we get disability sport to where it needs to be and how it's going? How can funding increase? How can we support that? How can we do more part of our clubs? How can we consider making our sessions more inclusive? How can we support ALN and disability learners? What considerations do we have? Do we have the ability to set that up as a club? How could we look about doing that? And there's a lot which coaches, clubs can do and where they should go. But I think this has been an excellent snapshot in terms of any coach who's currently out there coaching, or anyone who wants to step into coaching, just to consider those with disabilities, those with additional needs, those who want to be part of inclusive clubs, or how they could set up programs, or how clubs could grow and expand, or even some CPD and PL for themselves. I think is fantastic. So it's been really insightful to speak to you, Sophia, and it's been great to get your perspective on things, how you deliver things, where you're going, some insights, how you deliver sessions, some people that you work with, so those examples, what you would do in those situations and have done, and so many key considerations, because for any young coach starting out, they might not consider all of this. And, for sport is a big world, and football, and sometimes you might end up going into disability football or disability sport without realizing. But, we're always going to have inclusive sessions wherever we go, especially as the world is starting to, do more tests on people, and there's more additional needs coming out of disabilities, and therefore we're going to see an expansion in that. I know the school that I'm currently in now, we're doing more tests on pupils than we ever have done before. So we're seeing a lot more of that come through. And those processes. So I think the game is going to really grow in how that looks and displays. But for any coach which has been able to be lucky enough to listen to you speak this afternoon, I think has the ability to take so much away. And even just for a snapshot, I think there's a lot to really consider.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot more we could have spoke about, but we'd be able to if we did, there's so many, there's power chair football as well, power chair hockey, there's so many different avenues in disability that you could explore, like, and you know, like I say, you just got to keep thinking what's best for them, really. And, you know, that's the key message, I think, as well. You know, in this, like, you know what I mean? You know, ask them what they need, you know what I mean? It's not just because they got like a disability, it doesn't mean they're incapable. It just means that they need a bit of support. And, you know, it's like one of my friends said, because he's got plastic paraplegia in his arms and his legs, like, and he just basically said, well, just because I've got this disability doesn't mean I haven't got my mind, like, you know what I mean? I said to him, well, you've got your own mind, like I said, you know, it's not, you know, I said to him, I said, if you go to doctors now, I said, I'll try and say things to you. I said, but I said, ultimately, it's your decision whether you take it or not, like, you know what I mean?
I love that, and again, that links into something which you shared on your Twitter, or sits in your bio actually. Ability is stronger than disability, and I truly love that quote, and that's something that I wanted to really get in there. And I love what you said to your friend as well. So just by having these little comments and little considerations, as well as uplifting situations, which it can be, and just changing that context, can be really important for how we work with those with disability and additional learning needs.
Well, we just got to change other people's perceptions, you know what I mean? You know, disability doesn't mean you can't do it. Like, it just means it takes slightly longer. And, you know, like I say, it took me a long time to get to university, but we got there, you know what I mean? I mean, I was in college for 5 years, but, you know, we got there in the end, you know what I mean? And like I say, graduating and hopefully do masters. So, you know, it might take slightly longer than, you know, someone else, but without a disability, but, you know, so what, like, you know what I mean? It shouldn't really have to matter, like, you know what I mean? It shouldn't matter what journey you take as long as you get to where you want, like.
I love that, and that's another great quote as well, which yeah, I'm going to just absolutely benchmark the minute on that as well, because that's great in terms of what that is. And I think there's so many great quotes which you've come out with, or things that you said which are going to lead to great quotes, and just little considerations for those which you can see as a visual. And you know, there's so much which you are doing, and so much which I hope the game continues to grow and thrive off. And as you said, we could have continued speaking in so many different avenues which we could have delved into, but hopefully over a period of time that we can continue to speak again and build upon this, and create that journey as well, whereby it's a process and continued reflection, and that those listening can take away so much and keep building. And I think that's going to add in terms of more your experiences and more what you do as well. So I think that's going to be great how we could build upon that as well. So Sophie, for the champion of disability sport today, and what she does is really insightful and inspiring.
No, thanks again. Like, I mean, it'd be great to get down to Newport as well and see what your projects are like, because I know, like I say, we've seen Liverpool, Everton, Man City, and I met Man City a few weeks ago, Paul Kelly, you know, he's a really good person to get in touch with for disability. And Matt Pilkinson as well, you know, Man United, you know, they do really great things, but sometimes, you know, we don't actually think, oh, well, what are they doing further down the country that we could add? There's always something that you could, you know, do differently. Within your coaching, you know what I mean? If you look at, you know, places like Newport and Southampton and things like that.
Absolutely, and I've got a contact at Southampton, or someone who's been on, and she does primary school coaching, but I'm sure what they do over there is really insightful as well, and looking at how we could take things away from other clubs, and again builds that all-round circle into how we can work with others and what we can take away. We do a lot here in Newport. We're quite lucky, especially for a club which is probably the smallest club within League Two, and when we've got very sparse resources as well. But it just shows that it can be done, and we're working towards doing that and delivering that and being consistent. But there's so much which we can take away from each other, and it'd be fantastic if you can get down here. And you know, there could be an in-person episode which we could do as well. So that would be great. And it's been great to listen to your Liverpoolian or Evertonian accent, which has kicked in. Sometimes I've had to delay myself to sort of go, right, what did that translate into? But it's been great to really speak to you, Sophie.
No, it's been great to speak to you as well. I did have speech and language therapy when I was, 5 all the way through to 13, you know what I mean? So it's getting better. Like I said, I haven't had it for a while, but, you know, I just have to slow down a bit sometimes. Like.
It's not your speech and language, it's just the thick accent, that's all. We're not very used to it here in Newport. We're very used to like a bit slower. That's just where we live here in Newport. Everyone's just quite slow. But it's just that thick accent which sometimes doesn't kick in on that player via. But no, it's been great, and it's been like listening to Jamie Carragher speak. It has been great. But before you go, I'm going to throw some quick 5 questions at you, which I do with every coach, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Amazing. If you had to have someone describe you in 3 words as a coach, what would they be?
Someone's like, well, these probably going to be a lot more like 4 words, to be honest. Like, you know what I mean? Because people always end up trying to describe me more than one. Like, always got told the other day I was proactive in my appraisal at Greenbank, because I'm casual staff there. Like, and he basically said, you know what I mean? You're not afraid to really get like stuck in, sort of thing. like good in timekeeping wise, you know what I mean? You know, I'm not really late to many things, like, you know what I mean? You know, and if I am, then, you know, people will know about it, you know what I mean? You know, because they'll just think, well, you know, the session hasn't started yet, where is she, like, you know what I mean? It's, you know, you sort of wonder what happens next, like understanding as well, you know what I mean? Because I'll try and understand everybody as, you know, everyone's got a different disability, and people have, you know, people say to me, oh, I've got this condition. It's like, well, yeah, that's fine. Like, you know what I mean? You know, it's not, you know, it's not the end of the world that people have got a disability. Like, and the last one's probably, you know, enthusiastic as well. I always try and, you know, show a bit of passion, you know what I mean? You know, if you're not passionate about sport, then what, you know, what on earth are you doing? That's Brett Smith, you know, he said that to me at the conference in the Youth Sport Trust one, you know, a while ago. So, yeah, Brett, cheers. Thank you for that. Look.
No problems. Thank you for those insights and those breakdowns as well, which is really pleasant to hear. If you could move to any country to coach, where would it be?
I have to be honest, I really wouldn't want to move. I'd want to focus on this country first. Like, I mean, if I really had to move, you know what I mean, then I'd probably move to Spain. But for now, I'd probably want to stay here and, you know, focus on, you know, probably our own country's problems, and, you know, the fact that we've got loads of people with disabilities, you know, that need, you know, our support really. Like, so I'd focus on them first, and then maybe move to Spain. Like.
I love that, and I think that's again another great insight in terms of what you're doing, where you're going, and I think that's so touching in terms of the participants and what the program is. Lucky to have you within that FA participation, just being a coach in terms of what you're doing. So that's a fantastic answer. If you could spend a day with any coach or manager, who would it be?
Probably be Pep Guardiola. Like, I've looked up to him since I was 16. He's one of them. He's, you know, like, he's always sort of on the ball, really. Like, he knows what's going to happen next, and, you know, I think we could learn a lot from each other, really. Like, you know, I'd like to meet him one day, you know, if he ever got the chance. Like, it'd be, you know, probably the meet of a lifetime, to be fair. Like, you know, we could probably talk about disability sport for ages, to be honest.
I think that's brilliant, and I was quite lucky to meet him once. So I didn't, you know, have a conversation or anything. But Man City were training down here in Newport. I'm not sure whether they were playing Swansea or something in the cup, or so, when Swansea were in the Premier League. But they were literally at Dragon Park, our FAW training centre, and I was delivering a coaching session around the corner. And one of the coaches that I worked with said, "Sit there, get round, get some pictures." And I went, and so did my friend. And he ended up going, right, I'm going to leave now because they're taking quite long, but I got a session to get to. And I said, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice the session. I called in some cover really quickly, and I waited. And I was very lucky to have pictures with Pep Guardiola at that time. But yeah, that was fantastic. You know, 10 seconds, and that was great. Who was or is your role model?
It's always a hard one. This, like, you know what I mean? Because, you know what I mean, you probably get many role models that you think of in your life, like, but it's probably my mum, to be honest. Like, you know what I mean? She sort of started, you know what I mean? She got me involved in football when I was 8, like, and you know, just after I finished having my fits, like, and she said, well, there's not anything really that you can't do. I'm learning to drive as well, and she was, you know, a big thing in saying, well, you can still, you know, drive, you know what I mean? You haven't had a fit for so many years. So she's a big inspiration, really, in general. Obviously, she knows how much I think of her, you know what I mean? And, you know, we always talk, you know, and say, like, oh, what are you going to do next? And she'll always be there for support. And, you know, I thank her for that, really. Look.
I love that, and you know, you've definitely brought her up throughout the conversation at multiple times as well. So that's really heartfelt, and it's great that your mum is your role model, and you're both very lucky to have each other. And it's great that she's got you involved in the game of sport, because even there, by getting you involved in a game at the age of 8, look at you now. You know, you're still involved, and, you know, as you said, if that takes you up till 90. Wow, she's created a lifelong participant, a lifelong enabler, someone who champions the game, someone who's going to have that big impact, and has. And that's incredible, just by having a conversation or looking at the age of 8, how you could be involved in sport, but how that's created a lifetime of involvement, which is fascinating.
Well, it's one of them. I mean, you know, like, I mean, we as coaches can do the same, like, you know what I mean? You know, it does start at home, you know, it starts with the parents, like, but then, you know, like, when they get to, like, 16, whatever, you know what I mean? You know, it's up to the coach, really, you know what I mean, to say, okay, you know, do you still want to take part in sports? And most people will say, yeah. Like, there's a girl in our junior club, you know, who used to actually go to Man City, but she decided that she likes grassroots that much that she doesn't actually want to go to an academy, like, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's making things like that, you know what I mean? You know, making them actually, like, taking part in grassroots and taking part in sport, you know, a lifelong thing. And I think, you know, she'll be involved for many more years. Like.
I love that, and that's a huge congratulations to, you know, the game, and creating that and enabling that pathway as well. If you had free choice of any job out there, so, you know, you've already touched upon it where you want to go, but say you could have the choice of going, right, Liverpool want me to head up the entire city's disability sport, whereby they're going to work in harmony with the FA and Liverpool Council. That could be one, or whether it's just working for the FA but heading up disability sport. What would be, say, where would you sort of want to go with that? What is your, well, I know you've touched upon it, but if you had the free choice of what you wanted to do, say with the unlimited resources, which they said, right, so if we want you to come in, you've got unlimited resources, want you to make this impact, where would you sort of go with it?
I'd probably start just because I'm just leaving uni. Like I'd probably start with going to sport development officers and stuff first. You know what I mean? Because you start most of the time you start within your county. You know what I mean? So you'd start developing people within Liverpool and people within Merseyside and the Northwest, and you'd think, well, okay, like what I mean? It's great that we've got disability provision in Liverpool, but why hasn't every county within the Northwest got the same thing? Like we're very lucky to have places like Greenbank. Otherwise, a lot of disabled people would be very lost and very isolated. I probably wouldn't even think about sport as their first thing to go to. Probably the second one would probably be football development officer within the county FAs again, because you can start with the county. That's probably for later on in the next 5-10 years sort of thing. Like focus on actually focusing on football. You know what I mean? Focusing on those people who may not think of football as one of their sports, but then they might want to come in. They might want to be a disability coach, and they might have a disability themselves but not know how to go about it. So get them involved and create a disability coaching course for them as well. I've got some CPD that's going out with the county FA. Just generally, it's supposed to be like a level 2 course, but I've got to try and actually speak to England Football to try and get it approved as CPD. So that'll be out soon. And then hopefully the third, the main sort of job, if you like, after 10 years. So be the head of disability football, making sure that no one's left behind and making sure that everyone's got the freedom to go and play football if they want to. Making sure that people aren't feeling isolated. They're not sitting at home and they're quite happy to go onto a football pitch or go and play cricket or go and play bocce. Go and make sure everyone's happy, really.
I love that, and I love that CPD as well, and hopefully it does become approved and can get out there, because I'm sure it's going to be a great CPD and exciting for the opportunity to be out there and be part of that for yourself. So let's fingers crossed and let's hope that happens for you. Who is your all-time favorite player?
Again, it's a hard one, because I've got many favorite players, but probably the main is probably Steven Gerrard. He's always making sure that he's I've had many different favorite players over the years, but he's at the moment it's Steven Gerrard, and he's quite he's quite he won't speak anything dead complicated. He makes his instructions dead simple. And when he went to be a manager for Rangers, I think it was, he created quite a good impact. And then I'm not sure if he's still managing Rangers now. I haven't kept up with him for a bit, but he's he's one of them. He's never really given up, and he's got the determination to keep going. The same as Pep Guardiola, really.
Absolutely. And in terms of Steven Gerrard, he's actually currently coaching out in Saudi Arabia, so he's taking a big money move out there. So that's a different move.
Okay, well, it's the same as Jordan Henderson. I'm pretty sure he's just moved to Saudi Arabia as well. So
same club.
So hopefully they'll get their friendship back, and hopefully good to see them on the pitch and see what happens.
Again, shows where sport can take people and especially build up those relationships, and you never know where you might go or end up. Someone that or have that relationship with can end up there with you. So that importance of relationships and that buy-in is important.
Well, it's one of them. Some of the best friends you make are through sports sometimes, and you don't realise, and you think, you go to them, when did they first meet you, and they go, well, we were playing football or we were doing this, and a lot of the, probably the best friends I've probably met are through football, so, through a friend of football or something so. Yeah, you just, you never know where it leads,
Absolutely, completely agree. Completely agree. Absolutely. What is your favourite thing to do in your downtime?
Probably play football, to be honest, because a lot of time I have to coach it, so it's nice to be able to go and play it. Like I said, my mum's always saying, "Oh, you're playing football tonight." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm in Liverpool or I'm in Widnes, so helping out. Or I'm in after school, which is south end of Liverpool, so it's always sort of I'm always on the pitch, near a pitch or on it, I'm never really away from the pitch, really.
I love that, and I think that's brilliant, especially when you give so much to the sport and other participants and players as well. It's great that you can actually get back and play yourself, because sometimes we put others first and we deliver these sessions, but we forget about playing and giving up and that time that we can give up to it as well. So suddenly, we might be 30 and, we might not have the pace or the energy to play anymore all the time, and we can't go back and be 21, for example. So enjoy it and do it whilst you can. And just to finish up on, what is one thing you enjoy most about coaching?
It's probably the participants. I mean, I know I've probably mentioned them a lot, throughout the episode, but they make sport what it is, what I mean. Without participants, you haven't got a job, or you haven't, but the coaching role, that you can, consider, what I mean. So the participants are probably the best part, because you get to see them, especially junior level, you get to see them grow up, and then eventually they become coaches as well. So, like I said, the player before, consider going to Man City, and want to stay in grassroots, she's probably a future coach, and next few years, when she gets old enough, and you just think of them. Well, you've achieved, you say to them, you've achieved so much, and it's good to see them achieving, and good to see other coaches coming into the game, through other generations, because one day, we won't be able to coach, so they'll be, replacing us, really. Look.
And what a way to finish the episode. And the fact that you consistently mention participants throughout the episode just shows where the importance is on that, especially around disability and inclusion as well. So, as I said, it's been great to speak to you, Sophie, and that wraps up a fantastic insight in terms of who you are, what you've done so far, and a fantastic hour and 15-minute episode whereby there's so much included within that. And it's great that you've been able to pencil that in on your Saturday afternoon, and on a weekend, especially when you've got downtime to even talk about sport as well. And sometimes it's nice to switch off from that, but I do really appreciate it. But it's been great to see what you have been doing on your socials, and it's great to hopefully continue to see what you will be doing, and continue to achieve what you aspire to achieve and where you want to go, and hopefully see you continue to thrive and build upon that, but to be part of that journey and included within that along the way, and what you're able to give back just shows how lucky the game is to have you. So it's a big thank you from me, and I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you being adaptable and getting this arranged. But I'm glad that you could make this happen, and you've been able to come on and share your wisdom, share your insights, share your experiences, and really deliver on this fantastic episode. So again, thank you from me.
No, it's been great to meet you as well. Like I say, hopefully get down to Newport soon. I'll probably message you on Twitter with a date, and we can hopefully meet in person. It'd be great to meet you and see what's up, places like Newport do as well.
That would be great. Yeah, just let me know, and my DMs are always open to you, and happy to speak anytime. But really appreciate it, and I hope you can have an enjoyable weekend and some time to yourself. But thank you from me, and speak soon.
Yeah, same to you as well. Speak soon. Thanks very much.
Nice. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.